Is everybody in? Is everybody in? The show is about to begin.
Welcome to the podcast, concerts that made us, interviews and stories, tales from the bus. We love taking you back to when it all went down. The greatest live shows and the cheering crowd sound. It's concerts that made us, concertsthatmadeus.com.
Hey, this is Jamie from Bard, aka the Bard Band in Montclair, New Jersey, United States of America. And stay tuned for Concerts That Made Us.
Carrying the dead, souls across the sticks to another world. Places got the fix. Give him a silver dollar, knows just what to do. The devil's in his eyes, he's got the fix on you. Oh, treading out burning, treading out burning, treading out burning, treading out burning. Fairy said steal your teeth, comes to you at night at a time you can hardly breathe. She takes all of your teeth, she leaves them in your mouth. The sky is growing darker, the wind is blowing south. Oh, treading out burning, treading out burning, treading out burning, treading out burning. Reaches in his pocket, pulls out a bloody rag. A girl goes round the corner, gonna find his body teeth. He yells at her to stop, and they know that they gotta leave. Oh, treading out burning, treading out burning, treading out burning, treading out burning. Treading out burning, treading out burning.
Jamie, you're very welcome to Concerts That Made Us.
Thank you very much for having me today, Brian. Really appreciate it.
It's great to have you now. I'm looking forward to diving into your music over the next bit. First off, Bard recently dropped the track Dreadnought the Ferryman. It's a hell of a funky track. Can you take us deeper into it?
Yeah, it's definitely. I wrote that song a few years ago. Believe it or not, coming back from a camping trip, and there was just a whole bunch of crazy stories told around the campfire that night. That is typical when you go camping and you're hanging out with your buddies. And the next morning, I popped up, and believe it or not, I was at a place called Dingman's Ferry in it's on a river that separates the states of New Jersey and Pennsylvania in the US. And Dingman's Ferry is at some point used to be a place where there was a ferry that would take people across the river. And so the joke was it was the Dingman's Ferryman. And I didn't think that made a really good chorus to a song. So I changed that to Dreadnought the Ferryman. But yeah, it pulls on, some of the themes of our music, which is, looking at classic literature, classic poetry, and in this case, drawing upon my knowledge of Greek mythology and the ferryman who would take you over the river to the other side. And most people didn't make it back. So.
Yeah. You mentioned pulling on literature. The concept of the band is very interesting. You started it as a sort of premise to put classic poems to music. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, I have been involved in community theater for a bunch of years in my area. I live right outside of New York City, so there's a very active arts community in my town. And I got involved with a community theater group that performs Shakespeare. And, probably wouldn't want my English teacher to hear this, but I was one of those kids back in school that I dreaded the idea of Shakespeare and trying to muscle my way through reading, Romeo and Juliet. Of course, those plays weren't written to be read out of a book. They were written to be performed. And fast forward to adulthood, I got involved with this group, and I developed a real love for the work of Shakespeare, and found that when I acted in it or watched productions of it, it changed my entire view. And suddenly I was able to kind of get back past the language challenges that probably intimidated me as a youngster. But it was through that experience that I was playing music with some friends, and one of us said, what if we took a Shakespeare sonnet and we tried to put it to music, and not necessarily try to recreate music of Shakespearean era, but actually put it to music that we would listen to and we thought was cool, and create a sound around that. And so some of our first songs as a band were literally taking Shakespeare sonnets and putting them to music. And actually this album that is coming out in another couple of weeks, October 4th, I think is the release date. It's actually got the opening track of it is a Shakespeare sonnet. We call the song "We Flattered Be." And then later on, we have a song called "We Are Such Stuff," which is based on a monologue given by Prospero in Shakespeare's play The Tempest. He's kind of this wizard guy, and he gives this great speech that says, "We are such stuff that dreams are made of. All of our lives are rounded out with a sleep," which I thought was, such a beautiful line. And so we put that to music. And then the final track before Dreadnought the Ferryman is also a Shakespeare sonnet called "Thou Art My All." Now, probably your listeners are hearing all this and thinking, who's going to listen to music that's like Shakespeare? But hopefully you've checked out some of our music by now to know that it's not what you expect. It's not what most people expect. And we get that a lot when we told people that background, and then they come see one of our live shows. The first thing friends come up to me and say is like, "Wow, that is not what I expected at all." So.
Oh man, oh man. Can you tell us a bit more about what it was like working on the upcoming album? What was the dynamic like between the band?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely, we love live performance. And although I wouldn't consider myself a deadhead, I kind of love the whole aesthetic of the Grateful Dead and the idea of every show, every performance, and even songs at a particular show. Each one is sort of a unique artistic expression. It's probably why I've grown to love jazz so much. I listen to a lot of jazz in my free time. And it's kind of funny because all the guys in the band listen to very different kinds of music. Some guys really like funk. I love jazz, but I also, grew up listening to the Beatles and Neil Young and Bob Dylan and, more recently have gotten into, indie folk rock bands like My Morning Jacket and Fleet Foxes. I would say one of my biggest musical influences as a singer is probably Marvin Gaye and some of the more soulful Motown guys that were out in the 60s and 70s. But I say all that because, what we really love is live performance and that idea that every show, every performance is kind of a unique experience. And even if you've heard us play some of the songs before, you may hear a completely different set of solos or dynamics in that song from the last time that you heard it, and we may end up playing a song for 10 minutes long with a solo that's just we're kind of vibing off of it. So when we went into the studio, Magic Door Records, which is the label that released the album or is releasing the album, the producer that worked with us and the owner of Magic Door, Ray Ketchum, he had been coming to our shows for a couple of years before we ever said we want to come record in your studio. So I don't know if that was just a good marketing ploy on his part to show up at all of our shows, but he had been a really good friend to the band. And so he really appreciated the fact that when we went into the studio, we wanted to somewhat capture that magic of a live performance. And so as opposed to the traditional route of like, let's go in and lay down the drums and maybe the guitar and some scratch vocals, and then let's start layering everything in this very isolated way. He actually created a studio environment that for the first day of recording, I mean, we spent an entire day basically just playing as a band. And we were, isolated to a certain extent, but we still got to have the eye contact and kind of vibe off of each other as we were playing. And that I think is really the foundation of the album. Is I want somebody to feel like if they came to a show, they're not hearing something that's completely different than this overly produced album that we put out, that they're getting that vibe that we create in a live show. But of course, then the studio just opens up all these additional possibilities to kind of layer on things. So, after we really did a few takes on each of the songs and got a take that we really loved, then we came back over several sessions, maybe over a few months, just starting to layer in things that we thought, created more texture to the songs. For example, additional vocal harmonies. We also, our drummer is also a talented percussionist. So he was, he can't play drums and percussion at the same time at a live gig, but we had him set up and play congos and do different things in the studio that we're kind of limited from doing when it's just, the five of us at a live gig. So it was a lot of fun, super creative process. And the one thing I will say about myself in the studio is, I'm never striving for perfection. I mean, perfection is the enemy of progress, as they say. I want something that I feel proud of, but it doesn't need to be perfect, and it doesn't need to, be so, tidy that it sounds overly produced.
Very true. That's a very good way to look at it. When the idea of this album came about initially, how close do you think the finished version holds up to it?
When we started recording this album, these were songs that we have been playing live for some time. So, I mean, we've been playing together as a group probably 4 or 5 years now, and have a whole body of original music that we've created. and we did we independently produced an album in 2022 called Come Back Often. And it was definitely a more raw album, but that was one where we got, just a bunch of songs that we had been playing for a while out. And so by the time we got to this one, these songs were already in our repertoire. They were in our DNA. I mean, we had played them so much together. So we came into the studio. I know some people like write a song and then go right into the studio and they're kind of experimenting and maybe changing the song and playing with the structure of the song. That kind of stuff was really nailed down for us on day one. I mean, we went in, we did multiple takes really just to get the best one, but if you listen to the takes, they were all pretty identical. We knew what the sound structure was, the song structures were, and what we wanted to do. On the back end, I would say that's where we had the chance to get creative, and we hadn't really thought through all the embellishments that we might want to do in the studio. And it's kind of like when you're in there and the producer opens your eyes to what is possible. That's when it gets fun to just experiment and try things. And some of that stuff made it onto the album. Some of it, of course, ends up on the proverbial cutting room floor. So.
I see. I see. Are you the type of guys that when you release something, you like to let it breathe for a while, or are you already kind of thinking of album number two?
Oh man, I mean, when we went in to record this album, there was already a new set of music that we were writing and working on. And of course, there's this trap you can fall into as a musician, which is my old songs aren't that good, and everything that I'm writing now is so much better. And the reality is, I think our producer Ray said this to me once, which is, your old songs aren't as bad as you think they are, and your new songs aren't as great as you think they are either. So somewhere in the middle. So we were already, working on a new set of songs and material that, yeah, my hope is for us to get back into the studio this winter when, maybe our schedules allow some more time on the weekends. People aren't out vacationing and everything like they are in the summer. And there's definitely a hefty set of tracks that we want to get laid down, and another evolution in the music that we're looking forward to sharing.
Nice, nice, something to look forward to. So, right, the podcast is called Concerts That Made Us. So I need to ask you some concert-related questions, if you don't mind.
Yeah, let's do it.
First off, I'll start off easy. As a concert goer, what concerts would you say have made you?
Oh man. Well, I think my first concert that I went to when I was in high school was actually Paul McCartney. And obviously that was in I guess the early 90s. So he was still going pretty strong. I mean, heck, he's still going pretty strong right now. He was just in New York City area earlier this year and blew it out and had Bruce Springsteen up there and everything. But um, I would say, starting there, having grown up listening to the Beatles, my dad was a big Beatles fan. He had all the records. We didn't listen to kids' music growing up. My dad put on Beatles. And that was just kind of like this amazing experience. And I grew up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And it was a stadium concert in Veterans Stadium, which has since been knocked down and replaced by a bigger stadium. But that set quite a bar because you got, obviously somebody who's literally a legend,
Yeah.
you're seeing it in a stadium. He's obviously like an incredibly polished performer. It sets a high bar for, going and seeing a show. But some other ones for me, I would say in the late 90s, I went to a Neil Young show. Neil Young has also been just a huge folk rock influence for me, somebody that I just love, his music and all the different stages he went through. And he just did this, classic Neil Young, comes out rocking with a full band for a set, then comes back on and does an abbreviated set with just acoustic guitar and playing in a huge venue, which takes so much bravery to like just stand up there by yourself with an acoustic guitar, but he could pull it off. And then he comes back for a third set where they rock it out again. And I was, young and poor at the time, so I could only afford seats back on the lawn. I couldn't actually afford to be under the shelter in a nice seat. And he comes out and it starts pouring rain. And of course, young person at a concert outside, it's pouring rain. You don't care. You're sliding in the mud. You're having a good time. And he blares into Like a Hurricane. And I don't know if that had been planned in his set list or if he just reacted to what was happening out there. But that left a huge impression on me. These days, I like smaller venue concerts. I like things that are more intimate. I've gone and seen Richard Thompson. He's another old head that played in Fairport Convention back in the 60s and 70s and has since just been a prolific songwriter and maybe one of the best, if not the best, guitarist out there. And he does these solo shows where it's just man and acoustic guitar. And if you close your eyes and you listen to him playing the guitar, you imagine there's three people playing. I mean, it's almost impossible to believe some of the finger picking work that he does. And of course, he can rock it on an electric guitar too. But the finger picking work that he does, and sort of the very rhythmic, not just sort of folky songs where he's doing triads and stuff and arpeggios. I mean, just really this super rhythmic driving stuff with song lyrics that just blow your mind. So that's kind of the stuff that you'll probably see me going to nowadays. And if I have to go to a big concert, I'm maybe sitting there with my earplugs on. So
It's a good mix, a good mix. What's your local scene like? Would you say it's very oversaturated with bands, or is there many bands fighting for the spotlight?
We're right outside of New York City. We have a really vibrant arts and cultural community that we live in called Montclair, New Jersey. And so it's what I love is the wonderful diversity of this town. People from all walks of life. Not many people that live here grew up here. A lot of them are folks that lived in the city when they were younger, or let's say they moved to New York City maybe in their 20s for that first job and to see the bright lights in the big city, but eventually maybe had kids, started a family, and they move out to a place like this. And it's great because, it's really easy to kind of integrate into a community like that where there's so many people that have moved here and have similar life experiences of how they got there. But, you could turn around and on my block, I've got somebody that, works in finance and investment banking. And, on the other side of the block, I have somebody that's a Broadway actress. And on the other side of the block, I have a news reporter that works at, one of the big news corporations. And, you've got artists, you've got musicians, you've got creatives of all kinds, right aside all the folks that are doing, lawyers and accountants and bankers that you see in New York City. And that's kind of the beauty of it. The scene is there's a lot of really great venues, and we've developed some great relationships with those venues who love to have us back. They, really like that we connect with a diverse audience. Some bands, it's like, this works if you have a bunch of young people, or this works if you have a bunch of heavy metal people, or this works if you have a bunch of older people that want to hear classic rock, or, that kind of stuff. And, what is the fun of it is that we're kind of blending a lot of musical styles, and it's not a cover band. People have never heard the music before. And we find that, all ages, we were at a gig the other night where it was like, there was an older couple that stood up and they started like dancing to the music. And then over here, there was a bunch of like parents with little kids, and the little kids were all up dancing. And it's kind of cool to see like across the generations and ages. It's not like one group said, that's my music, and the other group said, this isn't for me. I would say the hard thing about playing in our area is that there is such a focus for booking cover bands. A bar on a Saturday night that wants to, entertain a packed audience, they're going to love a group that comes out and does, the Grateful Dead cover bands, or a Pink Floyd cover band, or, alternative rock cover bands, or playing a mix of covers. And, it's something that all of us in our band, we are here making music together because we enjoy creating original music. And if we wanted to go out and play in a cover band and just make money at weddings and bars on the weekends, like that's an easier path for sure if you just want to play a lot. But we are all committed to wanting to do original music, and we've stayed really true to that. And it does make sometimes when you go into a live performance setting, it makes it hard because you start singing a song everybody knows, you immediately get people's attention. When you sing songs that nobody's ever heard before, there's this additional challenge, which I love as a performer of like, how do I bring the audience into my world? Like, how do I create this vibe and this feeling that invites them in to my world? So we talk about some of the music, obviously, before we perform the songs. We really, many times go into live performances without a set list plan so that we can kind of shape the show around the mood of the audience and bring things up when we want to, bring things down, as opposed to saying these are the 10 songs we're going to play for the next hour. But
Speaking of audience, is there any audience interactions that kind of stick with you over the years?
well, you said that, and before you even finished the sentence, I immediately thought about being at an Oktoberfest a few years ago, where we watched a guy maybe drink a few too many beers and was sitting in the front row of the beer garden, literally feet away from the stage. And at one point, after talking a lot through the show, literally stood up and spilled his guts everywhere. So that obviously sticks out. But I think for me, it's actually like I love seeing, like I said before, people of all ages connecting and with the music, and not just like, oh, we're only hitting people our age, our demographic, seeing sort of the diversity of that. And whether it's like the old blues guitarist guy that's sitting in the back and giving me a nod, saying like, I dig this. Or it's that little kid, standing up with we'll give them a tambourine or something and letting them dance and express themselves. It's those kinds of like little interactions that make it super rewarding. And when you're standing up there, if you're really in touch with the audience and you're part of what you're doing is drawing from the energy of that audience and putting energy back out, you look out there and you can see the people that are like connecting to it. And it might not just be the people up front, and it might not just be your friends and family that showed up. It's sometimes that guy sitting in the back of the bar, or the couple that's nuzzled up and maybe doing their thing, but you could see them moving and you could see their response after each song. That's the kind of stuff that fuels me and that I love to see.
Perfect. Perfect. Now, a fun one. Out of all the gigs you've played over your entire career, is there one you would consider the best? It just couldn't have gone any better.
We recently had an album release party in preparation for this album release, and we performed at a kind of our local haunt. It's a place called Tierney's Tavern in Montclair, New Jersey. And it's been around for, I don't know, 50, 60 years, maybe 100 years. It's been around a long time. It's an establishment. And when I meet people that have ever lived in this town, even people that lived here 20, 30 years ago, first thing they say is Tierney still standing? And not only that, when people come back after 30 years to the town and go into Tierney's, they say it looks exactly the way it did when we were here 30 years ago. And they've got an upstairs room with a nice proper stage and sound system and a bar. It's not the main area downstairs. So, when you do a gig up there, you kind of draw the audience, but we love it because it's in our hometown and, it's really easy to do that. But we go to Tierney's every Thursday night after our weekly band practice in one of our band members' basements. We go afterwards and have a pint, and we debrief on rehearsal, right? And like what went well that night, what we want to do different, what the next gig is. And so we had a gig at Tierney's lined up for this album release, and about 2 weeks before the gig, one of the big media outlets, newspapers in the U.S. called USA Today, published a best bars in the United States, and there were 24 bars on the entire list, which pretty high bar, no pun intended. Say 24 best bars in the entire country, and of course you're thinking, New York City, Boston, Philadelphia, Los Angeles. I mean, all these amazing places. And sure enough, there's Tierney's Tavern listed as one of the
Oh
best
man.
bars in the US. So we felt a little bit of hometown pride there. We even joked maybe we made it one of the best bars just by showing up there once a week. But when we got there that night to play, it's always like a homecoming. Lots of our local fans were there, along with family, friends that were out to support us, and we just had a great show. I mean, we played really kind of our best music that night. Everything flowed. Everything was, just kind of the way you want it to be. So we actually recorded that, and we hope to mix some of those tracks and release a live recording. And we actually have another live recording on the streaming services called Live at Tierney's from a concert show that we did there a couple of years ago. So,
Oh man. Oh man. If we take that question and switch it around, is there maybe a gig that didn't go so well, and how did you guys overcome it?
oh man, you try to put those out of your mind, right? Like when things didn't go well. I can never say that there was one that I'm like, oh gosh. I mean, sure, I remember a time where the bass player was making a buzzing sound, and we're in the middle of playing and nobody could figure it out. The sound guy can't figure it out. We're wondering there's something wrong with the amp. The end of the day, it ended up being his cord, connecting his bass to the amp, which we didn't figure out until later. But what's funny is we listened to the playback of the room recording from that show, and you realize you couldn't actually hear it. All the only people could hear it were the ones on stage. So it was like driving us nuts for the night. It was actually a fill-in bass player for that night, not our regular guy, good friend of the band who plays bass and comes to all our shows, filled in. And, it was the kind of thing that kind of drove you crazy for the night. But you realize like the audience didn't hear it. And in the end, it probably didn't really impact what people experienced that night. But yeah, that kind of stuff. Or, I'm sure there's been some ones where I've been getting over a cold and kind of drives you crazy as a vocalist when you can't sing and hit all your notes. But
True, true. Not too bad. Not bad compared to what I usually hear anyway.
somebody showing up and not being able to play because they're too intoxicated or something like that. No, we fortunately, I think those days are long past for us. So
Thankfully. Before we dive into the last couple of questions, then, future plans. We've heard some of your future plans. Anything else you'd like to share with us?
yeah, I mean, we want to keep playing local shows and building our fan base. We want to keep putting out albums. I mean, we still have scratched the surface even with the first couple of albums we've released. I mean, we have just so much material that we've yet to bring into the studio. So definitely a clear vision for another studio album. Hopefully this winter that we can get out. The latter half of 2025 or early 2026. We'll see. And for me, it's just, continuing to create and continuing to evolve. If you do dig up our first album, Come Back Often, and you listen to the tracks on that compared to what you hear on Angel's Got His Back, the album coming out on October 4th, you'll hear an evolution. I mean, both in how we approach recording, but also the songs. And, there's more of a funk and a soul vibe in this album as compared to the first album, which felt a little bit more folk rock, straightforward. And that's kind of what I love. Like, we don't sit down and say, what's our genre? In fact, it's kind of a challenge because sometimes people want to categorize you and they say, well, what kind of music do you play? And it's hard to give an answer when you're like, I don't know. I didn't really set out to be a genre. And I mean, I like rock, I like jazz, I like soul. I got guys in my band that like funk, that like, alternative rock. And we just come together and we make music that we like to make. And even if I write a song and come in with the chords and the melody and stuff, it's still half done because it's not until the other guys bring their artistry to it that it really takes form to what it is. And when you keep playing together with the same people and you're all sort of music lovers exploring things outside of the music you create yourselves, it just means that the music itself keeps evolving. And I'm kind of excited about the unknown. Like, what's the next set of songs, or what's that next album gonna sound like, and how's that gonna look different or sound different than what we just laid down in the studio for this one? So,
I like it. I like it. You made me think of something there. In a perfect world, what's the roadmap for the band? Where would you like to be in, say, 5 years' time?
you know, we all have careers and day jobs, and you know, I abandoned as a young man the idea that I was going to go hit the road and be a full-time musician. And as much as you see the folks that are really successful about that, and you think what a great lifestyle that must be, that represents a very small number of people that actually reach that level. And there's a lot of starving artists out there that, at some point, sometimes even don't enjoy what they're doing because, they're not able to, outside of that, live a happy life. And, I'm very grateful and fortunate in my life. Um, and music, I do it for pure joy. And the fact that we get gigs and we've got an album and it's gotten attention and all these things, they're wonderful. And sure, I would love to keep building on that. And we will keep building on that. But for me, what do I hope to be doing in 5 years? I hope to be still writing new music with these guys and doing something different than what I'm doing today. And wherever that leads us, I'm kind of like up for the adventure, which means that there's no kind of bar that I am going to say, if I don't hit that, I'm going to quit, or I won't stick with this band. It's just the joy of the journey with these guys that I really love. So what would I like? I'd love to play more venues, bigger venues. I'd love to open for people that we love their music. I mean, that would be a great treat. We play with some other bands where we open for them or they open for us. But it would be great to expand that network and have, a band that, maybe has gotten to that next level, say, we'd love to have you guys tag along and open for us. So we'll see what the future holds.
I like it. I like it. Hopefully it'll happen. Right, the last couple, there are a couple of fun random ones. First off, besides music, what are you currently obsessed with?
Oh man, what am I currently obsessed with? Um, well, in the band, I play guitar, but I also play piano. I'm not a very good piano player. I'm not even a very good guitar player. I don't think I just surround myself with some great musicians, but kind of obsessed with like playing American standards, the likes of Frank Sinatra on the piano, and hope one day to like do a little jazz thing as another sort of extension of my love of music that would be quite different than what I do with Bard. What else am I obsessed with? I'm still obsessed with community theater and acting. I'm in a Shakespeare show that's going to run the next 2 weekends called Love's Labor is Lost, and so love being involved with that and all the fun that goes into putting on a show and bonding with a cast. I'm kind of obsessed with tennis. I played tennis when I was younger and through my college years, and sort of got away from it for a while. And over the last year, have gotten back into it. And any chance I get that I'm not working or playing music or hanging out with my friends, it's trying to get out on the tennis courts and stay fit and stay healthy. And those are kinds of things that keep me occupied in a positive way.
I like it. I like it. Bit of an odd one for you now. If you had to spend 24 hours locked in a room with any musician from history, who would it be?
Any musician in history, holy cow, that's a tall order. Um, I think I'd have to go back to maybe Neil Young, or I'd love to get in the studio with Marvin Gaye. I don't even know if I'd be brave enough to try to sing with him because he just has such an amazingly smooth, soulful voice. But I'd love to spend time with him and see how he created his artistry. I'd love to sit around, out on a farm with Neil Young and just jam with acoustic guitars for an afternoon and shoot the shit. So,
Be pretty cool. Pretty cool. And the final one, so what's your go-to album? An album you constantly revisit?
Oh man, what's my go-to album? Because I do have so many albums that I come back to over and over. Um, you know, Hear My Dear by Marvin Gaye would be one of them. I love After the Gold Rush by Neil Young. And I'm trying to think, I mean, Beatles, it's so tough to pick a favorite Beatles album. Is that Abbey
Yeah.
Road? Is that Revolver? Is that Let It Be? Is it the White Album? So I don't know. You can't lock me down with that one, Brian, because it's and I'm just trying to think of stuff that stayed with me for many years. Like I got two or three like go-to albums that I'm listening to over and over right now. Like there's a band out of San Diego, California called The Sacred Souls. And they put out their first album maybe 2 years ago. And holy cow, this summer I was so obsessed listening to that album over and over and over because I just thought it was, had an amazing groove and vibe to it. So,
Not bad, not bad. Very good one. Listen, Jamie, this has been an absolute blast now. Thanks a million.
Brian, thanks for having me. I've had a blast too.
Angels got him now and watch his curly hair. Beat him in the games, that little boy we led, yeah. And I go to home, no more than we know. Light is bright as fall and daylight is below. His path leads on and on through pleasant lawns and flowers. His brown eyes open wide at grass for green and hours. Yeah, yeah. And I come to home. We know more than we know. Light is bright as fall and daylight is below. Yeah. Painted like himself, the shining boy will sing. Exploring wondrous woods, sweet with eternal spring. Yeah, yeah. Can I go to home? No more than we know. Light is bright as fire. no more than we know. Light is brightest time in daylight, living love, yeah. Said angels got his back. Angels got his back, yeah. Said angels got his back. The angels got his back, yeah.
Hey guys, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please rate and review us on iTunes and Spotify. And if you're interested in signing up to Band Builder Academy, use the link in the show notes below and enter the code CONCERTS and you'll receive 10% off. So, until next time, keep rocking. Hey, what are you guys still doing here? The show's over. It's over. You can go home. Go on. We'll see you next time. We'll be here.